Welcome. I'm glad you're here. If you're listening to these words right now, it's probably not by accident. Something in your life is shifting, even if you can't quite name it yet. It's a familiar feeling, like standing at the edge of a major change, where excitement and caution exist at the same time. And today, especially January 8th, carries a signal that's hard to ignore. This isn't a story meant to entertain you for a moment. This is a quiet message for those who've walked a long road, endured more than they ever expected, and are now wondering whether all of that effort truly led somewhere meaningful. Stay with me, just a little longer. Allow yourself to slow down, to listen beneath the noise, because something important is opening right now, and it begins exactly where you are, in this very moment. Sagittarius. You've probably felt it already, even if you haven't found the words for it yet. There's a strange feeling in the air. Like standing between sunset and sunrise, where the light hasn't fully arrived, but the darkness no longer has the strength to hold on. Everything around you seems to slow down in this moment, not because life has stopped moving, but because the universe is taking a deep breath before turning the wheel in a new direction. January 8th carries a very specific vibration, not loud, not dramatic, yet clear enough that those who've lived, those who've been through enough, know this is no ordinary day. There are seasons in life when we're pushed to the edge of what feels familiar, not because we are weak, but because we've grown too strong to keep living inside an old frame. If lately your heart feels heavier, doing the same familiar things, if the paths that once felt safe now feel narrow and tight, that isn't a mistake. It's a sign of maturity. Life isn't taking anything away from you. It's quietly asking one question. Are you brave enough to step into a wider orbit? Sagittarius is the soul of the journey. Yet not everyone understands that the greatest journey always begins within. Before your feet ever leave familiar ground, your heart must loosen its grip on old beliefs, old roles, old expectations that once made you feel safe but slowly asked you to shrink. Those restless nights, those moments when you questioned whether you were on the right path, they were never signs that you were lost. They were proof that you were no longer asleep inside your own life. You may have thought you were standing still, that everything was moving slower than you hoped. But beneath the surface, movements were happening the eye could not see. Like a seed deep in the soil, before it ever reaches the sunlight, it must crack through a hardened shell. That process is not gentle, but it is necessary, and so is yours. What you've been calling waiting was actually preparation. Preparation for a version of you that can no longer return to the old starting point. Then, very subtly, a moment arrives when fear changes its shape. It's no longer a wall blocking your way. It becomes a door, slightly open, inviting you forward. You look back at what once made you hesitate, and suddenly it feels smaller than the strength you've built. Not because those fears disappeared, but because you grew. And in that realization, you understand something essential. This change isn't here to take anything from you. It's here to give something back. Your right to live in alignment with your true, free nature. In this quiet space, allow yourself to breathe more slowly. Trust that not every beautiful thing arrives with applause or bright lights. Some of life's greatest gifts come wrapped in stillness, in sudden clarity, in a peace you don't have to explain to anyone. When you stop gripping what belongs to the past, your hands become free enough to receive what's arriving now. You are no longer standing where you once were, even if the road ahead hasn't fully revealed itself yet. But you can feel the light changing, warmer, closer, more real. And as you continue forward without rushing, without looking back, something important is waiting to be heard. It arrives softly, like a whisper, yet deep enough to touch the bravest part of you. A reminder that this journey isn't only for you. It's also how your light begins to reach the world around you. There has been a desire living inside you for a very long time, quietly, like a seed resting deep beneath layers of time-worn soil. You never forgot it, but you didn't dare touch it too often either. Not because it wasn't important, but because it was too important. Important enough that just thinking about it made your heart tremble slightly. And right after that, that familiar sense of caution would appear. You learned how to smile and say you were fine. You told yourself everything would work out eventually, while deep inside, what you truly longed for was kept carefully hidden, like a secret you only allowed yourself to whisper late at night when no one else could hear. There were moments when you blamed yourself for hoping too much. You convinced yourself that dreaming was a luxury, especially after past disappointments. So you chose silence. You didn't speak it aloud. You didn't share it. You didn't even dare to pray for it openly. You told yourself, if you don't hope, you won't hurt. But the truth is, that desire never disappeared. It simply learned how to wait with you, more patiently, more wisely, more grown than before. One of life's quiet mysteries is that the things we try hardest to forget are often the very things finding their way back to us. Not loudly, not with warnings, just gently approaching. Once we're no longer standing where we used to be. Maybe you've noticed the signs recently, small ones, a passing thought, a feeling that's familiar, yet strange. A coincidence that makes you pause just a few seconds longer than usual, as if something were being arranged behind the scenes, in silence. Then, at a moment that isn't perfect but is ready, everything begins to move. It might arrive as a short message, one you read again and again, or an unexpected phone call that makes your heart race before you even know why. It could be a simple confirmation, a nod, a few ordinary words with the power to release years of waiting. Or maybe it's a meeting that seems accidental, yet the very first glance carries a strange sense of familiarity, as if you've been waiting for this moment much longer than you realized. When it arrives, you'll notice something important. It doesn't look the way you imagined. It isn't perfect. It isn't flashy, but it's real. It's solid. And most of all, it comes at a time when you are no longer the same. You're no longer someone who trades pieces of yourself just to be accepted. You're no longer someone who begs or chases destiny. You stand there, carrying everything you've lived through, and you realize you are strong enough to receive without losing yourself. A beautiful moment follows, one you don't fight for. Old fear dissolves on its own, like darkness retreating when the light becomes strong enough. Clarity appears, not because you have every answer, but because you no longer need them all to keep moving forward. And trust, the thing that once felt most fragile, returns quietly, gently, in the most human way. You begin to understand something deeply comforting. The universe never forgot you. Some gifts simply wait until the hands receiving them are ready, not sooner, not later. That quiet wish was never a reward for suffering. It was recognition for the road you walked, for the times you chose to continue even when you weren't sure, for the moments you stayed kind in a world that wasn't always gentle. And when you take a deep breath in that moment, a calm spreads through your chest. You don't have to chase the wish anymore. It's here, close enough to touch, real enough to believe you were never foolish for dreaming. From here, a new current begins to form, soft, yet certain, carrying you forward in the most natural way, as if every step ahead has been quietly guided for a very long time. The energy of movement is very present around you right now, like a new breeze just arriving at the door, carrying the scent of places you've never set foot in before. After that quiet wish began taking shape, something inside you shifted. It's no longer waiting, no longer watching from a distance, but a steady, silent pull forward. You're starting to realize you no longer belong to certain familiar places, not because they became worse, but because you've grown beyond the space that once held you, going farther, changing environments, or leaving behind a situation that no longer fits, doesn't carry sadness anymore. There's no sense of loss here. Instead, it feels like setting down a suitcase you've been carrying for far too long. Your shoulders soften, your breath deepens, your steps become lighter. You're not running from the past. You're honoring who you are now. What once served a purpose has completed its role. This movement may be very tangible, a planned trip, or an unexpected journey suddenly opening up, or it may unfold more subtly, leaving an old loop, a familiar environment, a rhythm of life that slowly made you feel smaller than you truly are. Sometimes it's the decision to finally say no to what once kept you hesitating, so you can say yes to the new path calling your name. And sometimes it's a major step forward in work or in life, where you choose expansion instead of staying safe inside old limits. What's different now is that you no longer feel the need to convince anyone, not even yourself. Certainty arrives quietly, no noise, no drama. You know where you're going, even if the road ahead hasn't revealed every detail yet. This clarity doesn't come from control, it comes from trust. Trust that you are capable of adapting to whatever lies ahead. And as you begin moving in this direction, something interesting happens. The world starts to move with you. New opportunities appear in places you never expected. Fated meetings happen in the most ordinary moments. Doors that once felt sealed shut open simply because you dared to step beyond the old boundary. This isn't random luck. It's the natural result of choosing to expand your own destiny. Along this journey, you begin to understand something important. Going far isn't just about changing locations. It's about allowing yourself to see life from a wider, more compassionate perspective. You loosen your grip on control. You release the fear of getting it wrong. You learn to trust the inner voice that knows the way. Every step now carries meaning. You're moving forward, and you no longer need to look back to prove it to anyone. There will be moments when you stand in a new space, look around, and feel it clearly. You are living, not surviving, not existing, but truly living. You hear your heartbeat sync with the movement of the world. You feel yourself opening to experiences, to people, to possibilities you once overlooked. And in that expansion, you begin to understand this truth. Destiny isn't something fixed, it's something shaped by brave choices, made again and again. This movement doesn't ask you to rush. It only asks you to be honest. Honest about where you no longer belong. Honest about where you're being called to go. When you allow yourself to move forward with both gentleness and resolve, the path ahead slowly reveals itself, in its own way, at its own pace. And as you continue, lightly, without hesitation, something else begins to surface, like an undercurrent beneath the water, carrying truth and challenge, waiting for you to meet it with the strength you've been quietly building through every step you've already taken. Not everyone smiles when they see you begin to change. As the light inside you grows stronger, it naturally reveals shadows that were once carefully hidden. You won't sense this with logic. You'll feel it through intuition. A slight shift in the air, a passing look, a sentence that sounds reasonable, yet leaves your heart feeling heavy. Very small signals, very subtle. Only those who've matured enough know how to notice them. There may be a person or a familiar kind of energy that doesn't truly want you to move farther, not because they hate you, but because your growth disrupts their sense of safety. When you rise, when you expand your destiny, their place in the old world begins to feel unstable. And instead of admitting that, they choose to hold on gently, carefully, like a hand resting on your shoulder just as you're about to step forward. Not enough to stop you, just enough to slow you down and make you question whether you're moving too fast. They may say they're worried about you, that the road ahead won't be easy, that you should think more, be careful, avoid taking risks. Their words don't sound like opposition. They're wrapped in concern, in experience, in reasons that sound logical. And that's exactly why they're dangerous, because they speak directly to the part of you that once felt afraid, the part that used to doubt itself. But you're no longer who you used to be. You've come too far to believe every piece of advice comes from pure love. Some advice is simply a reflection of the speaker's fear, not the truth of the path you're walking. And in this moment, you begin to see more clearly, not with anger, not with resentment, but with a calm, steady awareness. Truth doesn't reveal itself through dramatic confrontations. It shows up in the details, subtle contradictions, small inconsistencies, moments when words and actions no longer align. You realize that someone doesn't truly want you to keep going, even if they say otherwise. And once you see that, you don't need to explain. You don't need to prove anything. You only need to listen to that quiet feeling inside, the one that knows there's no turning back now. And here's what matters most. They cannot stop you. Not because you fight them, but because the road you're on no longer requires anyone's permission. When you stand firmly in your decision, interference loses its weight. Words that once made you hesitate now pass through like wind. You hear them, but you're no longer pulled by them. You understand, but you don't allow them to define your steps. In that moment, a beautiful kind of maturity takes place. You stop trying to please everyone. You stop explaining yourself to those who don't truly want to understand. You allow yourself to move forward without carrying guilt. And that freedom releases you more deeply than any decision you've made before. You begin to understand something essential. Loving yourself sometimes means accepting that not everyone can walk with you to the end of the road. As you continue moving forward, without hesitation, without looking back, a deep sense of peace spreads through you. You don't need to win against anyone. You only need to stay honest with your own journey. What doesn't belong on this path will naturally fall away without force. And as space opens, new room appears, ready to welcome people, opportunities, and values that truly align with who you are becoming. In that stillness, you may feel as if you've crossed an invisible threshold. No fireworks, no announcements, just a very real sense of relief. As if you've set down a weight you didn't even realize you were carrying. And as you take a deep breath, something new begins to shift within you. A different rhythm of life starts to form. One where what comes next no longer brings resistance, but release, fullness, and doors quietly waiting to open in a way that belongs uniquely to you. After those quiet forces no longer have the strength to hold you back, something very natural begins to happen. The pressures you've carried for such a long time no longer cling to you the way they once did. Not because life suddenly becomes perfect, but because you stop forcing yourself to hold on to what doesn't belong on the road ahead. Some burdens you once believed you would have to carry forever now fall away softly, almost all at once. And you're surprised by how light your chest feels when they do. The things that used to feel stuck, blocked, and drained your energy day after day no longer occupy your mind the same way. You don't have to solve every problem through tension or anxiety anymore. They begin to untangle themselves the moment you change where you stand. Like a river once blocked by stones. When the current shifts, the water finds its way again naturally. Your life moves the same way. When you stop resisting, stop blaming yourself, stop carrying what's no longer necessary, the flow opens. You start to notice this change in very ordinary moments. You wake up in the morning and your breath feels deeper. Thoughts about money, responsibility, and the future no longer press down on you as heavily. Not because everything is completely resolved, but because you no longer feel alone facing it all. There's an invisible support present now, enough to remind you that you don't have to carry the weight of the entire world on your shoulders anymore. The abundance you're stepping into isn't measured only by numbers or accounts. It lives in the feeling that you are worthy of good things, worthy of receiving after years of giving too much, worthy of support, of rest, of living more gently without guilt. When this sense of worthiness returns, money and opportunity begin to arrive naturally, without force, without urgency. You may notice that financial doors once tightly closed are no longer locked the same way. A new opportunity appears. A flow of income opens. Support arrives from places you didn't expect. But what matters most is how you receive it. You no longer doubt yourself. You no longer ask whether you're being unrealistic. You understand that this is the result of a long journey, one built on quiet effort and perseverance. During this time, something beautiful stands beside you, a person whose love is unconditional. They don't love you for what you achieve. They don't stay for what you provide. They're there because they believe in who you are and in the choices you're making. Their presence isn't loud. They don't seek attention, yet it brings a deep sense of safety. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to prove that you're on the right path. You take a step, and they're already there, walking with you quietly. That trust becomes a powerful source of strength. It helps you move forward without fear of judgment. It teaches you that you don't have to please everyone to be loved. And within that safe space, you allow yourself to open more fully to the abundance arriving now. You learn how to receive without guilt. You learn how to enjoy without fear of losing it. With old burdens set down and a new current forming, you find yourself standing inside a precious stillness. No noise of worry, just steady breathing, and a calm spreading through you. In that quiet, you understand something deeply. True abundance isn't about chasing more. It's about being full within. And from that place of inner fullness, what comes next in your journey arrives with a different quality, deeper, truer, more aligned, carrying a gentle reminder that you are moving very close to an important completion, where what's old closes softly, making space for a complete rebirth waiting just ahead. When the burdens have been set down and the new current begins to move, a deep silence appears, not an empty, cold silence, but the quiet of a garden after rain, where the air is so clear you can hear your own heartbeat. Sagittarius. This moment doesn't come to take anything from you. It comes to complete what has already fulfilled its purpose. An ending is not a loss. An ending is the final permission to live truthfully. There are beliefs that once helped you survive, but are no longer wide enough for you to keep growing. There are fears that once protected you from pain, but now keep you anchored in places you've already outgrown. There are ties once called responsibility, duty, expectation, that slowly became too tight, like clothing you can no longer breathe in. They weren't wrong, they're simply no longer aligned. And when you're mature enough to see that, closure becomes necessary, even if your heart aches just a little. That ache is not failure. It's proof of life, proof that you invested deeply in this journey. Yet there comes a time when you understand something essential. Not everything that once mattered is meant to walk with you to the end. Some things must be set down with gratitude, so your hands are free enough to receive the next version of yourself. January 8th stands like a door that doesn't require a key. It doesn't force you to walk through. It simply remains open, clear enough for you to see the light ahead, changing its tone. Not blinding, not dramatic, but warm and real. You can feel that you've come far enough to no longer doubt your decision. You're not stepping forward because luck suddenly appeared. You're stepping forward because every step before this trained you to be steady. The moment you choose to release what's old, a very subtle rebirth takes place. No noise, no announcement, just a lightness. As if you finally exhaled after a long journey. You no longer strain to become someone else. You simply allow yourself to be who you are, whole and complete in your own way. This rebirth doesn't turn you into a different person. It brings you closer to your true nature, more freedom in your thoughts, more honesty in your emotions, more courage in your choices. You begin to see life with less judgment and more understanding. You realize you don't need to race. You don't need to prove anything. Your path has its own rhythm, and you're walking in time with it. As you continue from here, everything becomes clearer in a very gentle way. You know what to keep. You know what to leave behind. You understand that softness is not weakness. It's the strength of someone who survived enough storms to choose peace. And within that gentleness, you open more fully to what's arriving, without the fear that it will disappear. A new belief begins to take root, slowly but firmly. The belief that you deserve a more expansive life, that what comes to you now will reflect who you are becoming, not who you once had to be to survive. The belief that you are allowed to choose joy, to choose fullness, to choose the path that makes your heart feel lit from within. And as you keep walking, without rushing, without looking back, a new journey reveals itself in every breath. Clearer, because you've stopped lying to yourself. Lighter, because you're no longer carrying what doesn't belong to your future. Deeper, because you are living in alignment with the Sagittarius soul, the soul of freedom, of truth, of journeys that don't just cross distance, but expand the depth of who you are.